Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 5, chapter number 5, entitled Lord Rishabhdeva's Teaching to His Sons. And today we're reading from text number 4, so I'll just read the Sanskrit and English myself. Nunam pramata kurute vikarma yadindriya pritaya apranoti nasadu manye yata atmanoyam ashanapi kleshata ashadeha. Translation. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received the body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. Purport. Begging, borrowing and stealing to live for sense gratification is condemned in this verse, because such consciousness leads one to a dark, hellish condition. The four sinful activities are illicit sex, meat-eating, intoxication and gambling. These are the means by which one gets another material body that is full of miseries. In the Vedas it is said, Asango Hyayam Purusha, the living entity is not really connected with this material world, but due to his tendency to enjoy the material senses, he is put into the material condition. One should perfect his life by associating with devotees. He should not become further implicated in the material body. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In this verse, the body is given the name Kleshada. Every Sanskrit word is very, very interesting, because if you look at the etymology, is very interesting. For example, a tree is known as Padmapa. Pa means to drink, and Padma means the legs. So it's like literally that which drinks through the legs, a tree, because it drinks through the roots. So in this verse, the material body is known as Klesha Da. Da means to give, and Klesha means misery. So the word for material body in Sanskrit literally means that which gives you misery. which is quite interesting, you know, because people think the body is the source of all enjoyment. But if you see, the body has so many more ways to give you problems than it can to give you enjoyment. Therefore, the body is known as Klesha Da. But in another part of the Bhagavatam, in the 7th canto, the body is given a different name. The body is known as Artha Da. Da again means to give, and Artha means great value. So in Sanskrit you have both things. The material body is known as that thing which gives you misery and that thing which gives you great value. Because ultimately it depends on how you use it, how you utilize it. Therefore, here Srila Prabhupada is commenting on Rishabhadev's teaching, saying that one should not misuse the material body. If you misuse the material body, it's going to really lead to a lot of suffering. And the ultimate misuse of the body is to engage in these forbidden activities. Why are these activities given as hugely harmful? Of course, we know them as the 4 regulative principles. But where does it actually come from? So many of you may be familiar that in the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam, we hear about Parikshit, who is going around the kingdom. And then finally he comes across a bull that's being beaten by a very dark personality. And anyway, when Parikshit sees that that personality is attacking the bull, then he immediately, as a good ruler would, is ready to kill him, because how can you cause harm to the bull, which is the personification of Dharma? So then at that time the dark personality surrenders to Parikshit, and any Raja Rishi, rightful king, when someone surrenders to you, you can't kill them because they've surrendered. So therefore he says, I've surrendered, you can't kill me. So Parikshit said, but your presence in the kingdom is creating a very negative impact. He said, but you have to give me somewhere to live. So then the very famous verse of the Bhagavatam comes. Abhyarditas tada tasmai stanani kalaye dudo dyutam panam striya suna yatra adharmas chaturvida. Chaturvida means 4 places. So Parikshit looks at this dark personality and says, 4 places, stanani, you can stay there. Stanani means to stay. It's very interesting, again, if you look at Sanskrit. Like if I ask you, tell me words in English beginning with ST. Stop. Stay. Start. Staunch. Stone. Stand. If you see all of these words, they have a sense of being in this place, like stay, stop, stand, staunch, like that. It's interesting, isn't it? So stanani means that in that place, in that one place, or these 4 places. So Parikshit says to this dark personality, you can stay in these 4 places. Which 4 places? Dyutam. Dyutam means gambling. Panam means where there is intoxication. Striya means where there is illicit sexual connection. And Suna means where there is meat eating. So Parikshit says, you can stay in these places where these activities are going on. And then the dark personality says, but in your kingdom these things are not going on, they're not happening. So then Parikshit says, then I give you a 5th place where you can stay. And what's that 5th place?
Gold.
Gold, where money is hoarded. Because where there is money, then all other sinful activities come from there. Therefore, even in the biblical tradition it said money is the root of all evil. Actually it said love of money is the root of all evil. So where there is money, then it's very, like in many monastic traditions, they will not even allow the monks to touch money. Like I know one monastic tradition where if they touch money, even by accident, they have to fast for 1 day. Yeah, not good for book distribution. So in this way, this is where the 4 regulative principles originally come from. Therefore, when we take an initiation or we become serious in Krishna consciousness, then we vow to stay aloof from those 4 activities. Because it said that here Kali resides, so all darkness, all suffering, all inauspiciousness comes where these activities are being performed. And so, even in our projects, generally we don't encourage that large amounts of money be kept. Rather, Prabhupada would say, if you have money, spend it. Spend it for preaching. Just keep the money moving. Never just hoard, because as soon as you hoard, then immediately all deviant desires come about. Therefore, always spend. Just keep the money moving. So it's very interesting if you look at these 4 activities. You see, like in Krishna consciousness, there are things which, like, say, this is Krishna consciousness and this is science. There are things in Krishna consciousness which are like, this is what Krishna consciousness, this is what science says, and it completely integrates. It completely verifies each other. Then there are certain things in Krishna consciousness that science is just beyond science to even explore. And then there are certain things in Krishna consciousness that science disagrees with. So sometimes when you look at Krishna consciousness and science, they agree, sometimes they disagree, and sometimes they're just dealing with completely different things, and therefore there's no connection between them. So when it comes to the 4 regulative principles, this is one of the things that if you look at Krishna consciousness and you look at scientific or social research, it makes complete sense. Because even if you have no religious belief or no spiritual belief of Kali and foreplay, who is this, what is all this? Even if you have no belief of that, you can actually just see it in the world today. Wherever these 4 activities go on, it creates incredible problems. It creates incredible suffering, isn't it? Like intoxication. Can you tell me what are the problems that come in society from intoxication?
And violence.
Violence, abuse. What else? Alcoholism, yes. What else? Addiction. Addiction is a huge thing. In the next coming years, one of the biggest thing is going to be recovery. Do you have it in Italy? 12 steps. Yeah, like Alcoholics Anonymous and all these kind of things. All kind of addictions is going to become the biggest, and many devotees now are like preaching through recovery. And it's not just like everyone is going to suffer from addiction, and it's not just alcohol, it's so many other things, So intoxication, so many problems come. Meat eating, what social problems come from meat eating? Pollution. What else? Aggressiveness, bad mentality, yeah.
Bodily disease.
Health problems on a physical level, yeah. Conflicts, yeah, world conflict because of aggression and all of these things.
Also hunger, because food is not well distributed.
Starvation, yeah, because it's not a effective use of land. So many problems. It's clear. Even government organizations know that if we turn to a vegetarian diet, so many problems will be solved. Then if you look at illicit sexual activity, what social problems come from that? Promiscuity, pornography, that kind of stuff. What social problems come from that? Abortion, killing of embryos. What else? Violence, yeah, sexually related crimes like rape and other things like that.
Disruption of families.
Disruption of families, yes. Divorce and affairs and all these kinds of things, and then single parent families that come from that. That's a big problem.
Child abuse, also trauma, lifelong trauma.
Yeah, child abuse, lifelong trauma, even things like sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, HIV, and all these kind of things. So many problems come from, when there's illicit connection between man and woman. And then gambling. So many problems, no? Same things, no? Addiction, crime. People do all kinds of things to satisfy their gambling habits. You know a place called Atlantic City? Yeah, well, you know Las Vegas, right? So Las Vegas in America is like full of casinos. And in the east coast of America, there's another city called Atlantic City, which is like a small version of Las Vegas, full of casinos, gambling. So there was one news report some time ago that in Atlantic City there was a hospital, and in the hospital, the nurses, they started betting on which patient in the intensive care unit would die first. That's how much it got affected by the gambling mentality. So the nurses started gambling, like which patient's going to die first. And one time the bet became so high that one of them pulled the plug on one of the machines. It was called Angels of Death. It's what people do for money, for gambling. So you can see how all of these activities, even if you don't believe in religion or Krishna consciousness or any of these things, how just by engaging in these activities it brings so many problems in the world, so many problems in people's lives. But then in these four activities we also see that there's a spiritual reason. What do you think the spiritual reason is why, or the deeper reason why we don't take intoxication, apart from the material reasons that we just gave? What's the deeper reason for no intoxication?
More conscious?
Yeah, it basically creates a greater clarity of consciousness, a more steady mind, and basically allows you to be more focused, Like many people who did drugs in their life, later on they really regret it because their cognitive abilities are just like completely obliterated by that. Even we were talking about cannabis, right? Because now cannabis, even a lower form, is legalized now in Italy. But you were saying that even that kind of thing, it obliterates your capacities, right? What's the deeper reason behind meat eating? Spiritual reason.
Well, the living entities, we don't kill other living entities.
Yes, we see that there's a soul there. Yeah. And more than that, what do you think that brings when we treat animals in the right way?
Karmic reaction.
Yeah, but in a good way. What is the good thing that it brings when we treat animals in the right way?
We develop compassion in our heart.
Compassion and more sensitivity. Basically, being very careful about what you eat, and it brings a sensitivity and a compassion and a mercy. Yeah. What's the deeper thing that abstaining from illicit sexual activity? What's the deeper thing that brings in your life?
Purity of mind.
Purity of mind. Like, instead of seeing everything as an object of enjoyment, you rather see things as an object of service or like that. And what's the deeper thing that gambling brings? not gambling, not doing gambling. What does that awaken within us in a deeper way, spiritually?
Depending on Krishna.
Depending on Krishna, yes.
Accepting what's allotted for you.
Greed, avoiding overconsumption. It's also like this, like the business mentality is I give you this, I do this, and I get this back. That's business mentality. Gambling mentality is I give you hardly anything and I get loads back. And service mentality is that I give so much and I don't expect anything back. You see? So if you think about it, gambling mentality and service mentality is completely opposite. Because gambling mentality is minimum effort, maximum gain. Whereas service mentality is maximum effort. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. I don't want anything in return. I just want to serve. Therefore, the deeper thing that gambling allows us to do is be more in a serving mentality rather than being more in an expecting mentality, hoarding mentality. So like this, we can see that the regulative principles are very, very scientific. What we tell people to do in Krishna consciousness is not just follow these things, but deeply understand why we're doing it and logically explain it to themselves and to others as well. Okay, before I go on, just to see if there's any questions on that or comments or anything anyone wants to ask about the 4 regulative principles or anything I mentioned so far.
Yeah, I have a question about when we started speaking about the money mentality that the devotee shouldn't keep. And I was thinking, when we start, like, we want to start a new project and like expanding the movement, we see the example of Prabhupada, and he was like, just starting a project, even if he didn't know how, he didn't have the money to like going through it, or like renting houses, or like, but of course the money then arrived, but he was Prabhupada, so of course Krishna was reciprocating with him. So how is our balance? Like, we can't wait that we already have all the money to start project, because chances are we will never start. And it's this accumulating mentality, like that we need to get all the money and then like, but at the same time we maybe not have the vision of Prabhupada, of knowing like how to risk, and so how can we find a balance to like expand the movement in this way?
Yeah, we have to be practical when you're living in this day and age. I mean, even from a material point of view nowadays, like for example, if you don't have a certain amount of money in the bank, you wouldn't be able to get a mortgage out, which means you can't get a place. So like, you need to show, even to get things done in this world, you need to have some savings, you need to have some money there. So your question is, how much do we just risk, like Prabhupada risked, but he was a pure devotee, he was a visionary, and how much do we calculate and try to save and then take steps forward? I don't know if there's a definitive answer to that. I think everyone is different, everyone's a different personality, everyone does it in different ways. But definitely there's this very nice video by Shyam Sundar Prabhu where he talks about how in the early days of the movement there was a real spirit of just taking a risk. Like going out there and just, going out of the comfort zone and just relying on Krishna. Like he tells this story once that they had rented, I think it was Berry Place maybe, in London, and then they didn't have money for rent. So the landlord was really on their case, and it really got to an intense time, and they just didn't know like how we're going to pay this rent. And then they came out onto the street and they said all these notes were just flying.
No.
Money notes, yeah. Money notes were flying. You can tell it. He says this story. He said they caught it, as many notes as they could catch.
No way.
And they went back, and it was like just enough for the rent.
No way.
And then, and he says, I should show you this video actually. Can you get it? It's called, go on YouTube. It's called Panavasena, Take a Risk. Just go on YouTube and do Panavasena, Take a Risk. And he says, like, in the early days of the movement, we just had this spirit that take a risk for Krishna, and if you take a risk for Krishna, then Krishna has to come and help you. And he said, we tested that to the max. And then he says, but that spirit has died down. That spirit, we've become too comfortable, we've become too... So yeah, there must be a sense of taking a risk for Krishna. Because if you take a risk for Krishna, then Krishna is not forced. Well, you can get my laptop, it's on my laptop.
You can also use my laptop.
No, it's just my saved on the hard drive. I'll show you that video in a minute. It's very nice actually to watch that. So yeah, we have to balance taking a risk and being like rational and being like safe. Yeah, it's like a mix of both, right? So like if you go too much on the safe side, then you won't achieve as much growth as you can. And if you go too much on the other side, you won't be able to achieve sustainability. So what we want to do in the movement is we want to achieve growth, but at the same time there must be sustainability. So maybe it's like in the early days of the movement there was a lot of growth, but maybe not so sustainable. And maybe nowadays we're sustaining a lot, but we're not really growing. So maybe we need to kind of come back to the middle a little bit and start taking a bit more risks and like Guru's like father, he just a project and then just move on and keep growing and keep trying, and this is a movement. That means we're supposed to move. It means we're supposed to grow. We're supposed to be on the edge, So why does that help? You can ask something more if I don't know. Just kind of said a few things then.
I think it's what you were saying also yesterday, to find the balance between too hard for me and like not
yeah,
too
like finding a flow.
Like,
Yeah, you see there's like comfort zone, there's creative zone, and then there's crisis zone. So comfort zone means mode of ignorance, crisis zone means mode of passion, but creative zone means mode of goodness. So yeah, we have to make sure we are able to be in that mode of goodness, kind of creative zone. Anyone else want to ask anything on the 4 regs or on any aspect of what we've talked about here?
How to avoid that, because sometimes the risk is that devotees, because they fear to break these regs, they become internally, we were talking about it yesterday.
Guilty.
Yeah,
frustrated internally, and then
repress.
And so then they develop
misogyny, for example.
They develop this covert anger, so it comes out in other ways. So,
well, this was Sigmund Freud's philosophy. He was kind of like saying that, like, for example, the sexual appetite is the most harmful thing you can do in the world, according to him, was like to repress the sexual appetite. because he said it becomes like a pressure cooker. So if you just keep repressing, then it just comes out, and it's worse. So he was like going the other way, saying that you should just express yourself. But you see, we would say that both are bad. Like, to just repress is bad, and to also let it free is also bad. So what we would say is control it, but then channel it and turn it into something higher, purify it and engage it. You see? So we're not just trying to subdue lust, and we're not trying to express lust. What we're trying to do is transform lust into love. So we go like in the middle direction. So like, for example, we say no meat, but we don't say no eat. No meat. But eat by all means, but eat something better. So the idea is that when we give an alternative, when we give a higher taste, when we give another way, then we can actually, but when people are not accessing the higher taste and they're simply following, then it can become unhealthy. Therefore, there must always be positive Krishna consciousness, positive engagement of the senses and the emotion. Otherwise, it's like it becomes also dangerous. Yes.
Just a reflection of the point. I guess this point of engaging lust. I don't know if it's correct to word it this way, but to engage your lust. I think it would help bhaktas and devotees, young devotees, not to feel guilty. There is lust, it's fine, we all have it. Engage it. Don't try and repress it, don't feel guilty about it, nobody's blaming you. The science is perfect, you engage it. And maybe this has to do with your dharma also. I think I'm just connecting this, what we're discussing now, with the blame and the guilt, which can be quite a bit of a problem in our movement. If you have to follow, you would like to, but you can't because you have a desire, so you feel guilty, and maybe
it's like this. There's an idea. There's the real of where we are, and there's the ideal of where we want to be. And this is uncomfortable. The gap is uncomfortable. Right? So how do people, you have to ask yourself now, how do you deal with this gap? Because you have an ideal, you want to live to this purity, but you're not there, you're here. And this is all guilt. So how do you deal with that? There's basically 3 ways in which you can deal with this gap. One way you can deal with it is you can bring the ideal down. And you can say like, oh yeah, 4 eggs, no one can really do that in this day and age. It's nice, but it's not really practical, bring it down. No illicit sex, I mean, yeah, it's good as a theory, but no devotees are following that anyway, just bring it down, like be realistic. And that's one way in which people deal with their guilt, they dilute the ideal. So that's not good, because then you don't get to the destination. The other way you deal with this gap is you just walk away from it. You just say like, I want to forget about the ideal. If you forget about the ideal, then there's no gap anymore. That's why if someone is not able to live to the purity of Krishna consciousness, oftentimes what happens is they move away from the association of devotees. Because then it doesn't make you feel as guilty, you kind of just remove yourself. But that's also not good, because in your heart you can't forget the ideal, because once you know it, you know it. They say you can't, joining Krishna consciousness is like joining the mafia. You can't leave because you know too much. You can't. You know, you can't leave. So that second technique doesn't work either. So the only way to deal with this gap is to raise the real and meet the ideal. But most people, they don't feel like they can raise to the ideal. But what we have to do is we have to give them the achievable, give them steps that they can take towards that ideal. So sometimes we have this debate. Let me ask you, say for example, I'm smoking 20 cigarettes a day and I become a devotee of Krishna. Is it bona fide for you to tell me, okay, now only smoke 10 cigarettes a day? Is that bona fide? Because you're telling me still, you're encouraging me to smoke. But you're encouraging me to smoke less. Who would say that's a bona fide way of preaching? Anyone have any doubts about that as a preaching strategy? No, you think that's okay. But you're encouraging me to engage in sinful activity.
Yeah, but less and less.
Less and less. So that's the point. Yeah, that if you tell someone smoke 10 cigarettes a day, but you always remind them that there's an ideal that they're getting towards, then that's absolutely fine. So that's what we need to do, basically, that we need to give people, in the gap between the ideal and the real, we need to give them the achievable. And if we give people steps, then they don't feel discouraged. But oftentimes we don't give people steps. We just tell them, do it, or you're in Maya, or do it, or you're out of it, or do it, or
Yeah, also, Narada Muni to Mrigari.
Exactly. Yeah. What did Narada Muni say to Mrigari? He was killing all of these animals, half killing them. So what did Narada Muni first tell him to do when he was half killing the animals? Anyone remember?
At least kill them all.
He said, kill it fully. So that's like strange, like kill it fully. And he said, yeah, but at least then you're not causing them as much suffering. Half killing them is like so much suffering. Killing them is also suffering, but it's less. And then later on, then Mrigari ultimately gave up killing altogether. So Narada gave him a halfway point to get to before getting there. That's a good example.
On this respect.
Also on this point, I also was impressed the other day. I was reading Bhagavad Gita and I read Krishna saying gradually, step by step.
Step by step, yeah.
Those same words that you Maharaj used now, gradually, step by step.
Yeah. And sometimes, like we see in the Vedic culture, like there was Varnashram Dharma. So actually the Brahmanas were supposed to follow all these ranks. And we see that, for example, Shudras, Kshatriyas had different standards. And sometimes, I feel that, also speaking with other devotees, that not everyone is by Dharma, by his nature, might be able to follow, but only those who have like more Brahminical tendencies. And so to force somebody who has a Shudra nature to follow a Brahminical nature is just making harm to him, maybe. And that's why Srila Prabhupada said that his mission was not yet completed because he needed to establish Varnashram Dharma. So he like emphasized more, very much the Brahminical part.
Yes.
But maybe we should also learn how to understand what's the nature of
people. Yeah. Of course, in the Krishna consciousness, and that is true. But then we can also say that in the Krishna consciousness movement, because we are trying to create a Brahminical society, and ultimately we want everyone to be a Vaishnav. Therefore, even those who are Sudras, even those who are Kshatriyas, still we encourage them to try to follow the regulative principles as a baseline of purity. Because for Vaishnav life, that is very, very much needed as a foundation. But yeah, you're right, it's different. And different people need to be explained and encouraged in different ways as well. So, yeah, like some people learn through, will elevate themselves through knowledge. Some people elevate themselves through association. Some people elevate themselves through like activities or engagement in something, practical engagement. So we should also understand people's mentality and, you know, like elevate them and inspire them individually according to their personality as well. Yeah, nice. Anything else? Okay, maybe we just, because time is going, maybe I just show you this, since you asked about, you know, I can show you this video, which might be interesting for you. Wait a second. Okay, so this was just a video that they created to encourage devotees to like be more bold. And okay, so I hope you'll be able to hear it. How to do this? Can you see if I go like this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Full screen. Full screen. Okay.
We lived a few blocks from the temple, and one time there was no money for rent. I mean, I was working as a carpenter and not making very much, and supporting his family. And a few of the other devotees, like Jayananda was a taxi driver and he was giving all his money. A few other devotees had jobs with maybe less than 10%. Everyone else was a hippie. So there was never enough money because we were feeding everybody on the street every day. There was rent to pay and so on. Gas to put in our cars to go out and do programs and so on. So we were really in a bind. There was no money for rent. We were behind about 2 months, and we were in very grave danger of being evicted. Landlord had severely gotten down on us. Malti and I walked out on the street, on Ashbury Street, in front of our place there, one morning early to go to the temple, walk to the temple for kirtan. And there were all these $100 bills blowing down the sidewalk. One after another. We just started running around the street picking up $100 bills. There wasn't a person on the street. No one ever figured out where that came from. These kind of things, I could always harken back to the magic days of Prabhupada. These are kind of things we begin to expect of Krishna. Prabhupada, another thing he inculcated for us from the early days, if you take a risk with Krishna, stick your neck out and spread Krishna consciousness, Krishna must help you personally. And those who see Krishna closest take the biggest risk for him. We tested that to the max, and it worked. We got to see Krishna. We got to see $100 bills rolling down the street. This spirit has died down. This spirit has died down. We're too comfortable.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Your pride, your property, your family, your bank balance, your skyscraper building, all them. Correct. Brother. This is God. Now understand God. So to believe or not believe, God will come one day, will take you everything, and give up. That one has to believe. Yes. As sure as death. Then God is here. So unless one is mad, he cannot say there is no God. Anyone denying the existence of God is a mad. They don't say he's blind, he's stupid, he has something. Mad is the sum total of stupid.
Such a nice reflection on that from Shyam
Wow.
Chandra Prabhu.
I couldn't hear properly Prabhupada speaking.
Oh, Prabhupada. No, you, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can say that. He was just saying that, you know, at one point everything will be taken away from you. Your money, your bank balance, your position, everything will be taken away from you. And then Prabhupada was saying, yeah, therefore, you know, Krishna comes, he takes everything away, and you'll be mad. You're mad if you don't believe in God. And then the devotee said, oh, maybe we can just say they're blind because they don't believe in God. And Prabhupada said, yes, madman means the sum total of all blindness. But yeah, the spirit that Shamsundar Prabhu talks about, you know, like all of you are here, it's really dynamic. It's such a spirit. You're living that spirit. We come in, it's very encouraging to see what all of you are doing. And some people think the pioneering days of Krishna consciousness were in the 70s, the 60s. Of course they were, but they're now. There's so many cities, places, no center, nothing going on, and you can just go, you know. Couples, you can go, like they were couples, right? They came to London and they just preached together and just did amazing things, you know. But that spirit was there to take a risk. So, wishing you the best. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai. Jai.